What the Tech is sponsored by IT Dev Connection in Las Vegas, September 15th to the 19th. Register now using offer code TECH14 to save $200.
What the Tech?
Hey everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I'm Major Jerry, and of course I'm joined by Paul Thurrott from Las Vegas, Nevada. How you
doing? Pretty good.
Going to a couple shows, hanging out by the pool, gambling.
I am actually going to a show. I'm going to see that Cirque du Soleil Love show tonight.
Oh, nice. I heard it's amazing.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the Cirque du Soleil stuff here, but for a few trips to Vegas now, I've intended to see this one and haven't. And so a bunch of us are going from work.
So you are currently in Las Vegas. You're at the Aria for IT Dev Connections, which you and Mary Jo had a panel yesterday.
Yeah.
And I heard rumors that the thing was jam-packed.
It was full. Yeah, it was pretty full. It was a big room, too.
How long did you guys go?
Over an hour. It's like maybe an hour and 10 minutes, something like that.
The people come up and be like, hey, you're that guy from What the Tech.
No.
Because I always get, you're the guy that does a show with Paul, right?
Right.
And I go, yep, that's me. I'm that guy.
It's interesting, you know, I would say it seems like more people, it must be because you can see me, you know, like people kind of recognize me from the podcasts, you know?
Well, I mean, you are one of the type of people, like if I saw you in the show, and I'm awful with this, right? Like it comes off so arrogant, but I literally cannot remember who people are. Like I will see someone and I'll realize that I know them, but I'll convince myself it's not that person. Always. I do that all the time. I had that happen to me yesterday where I'm sitting at a restaurant and the person next to me, I was friends with him like in high school, and I know it's him, but I'm convincing myself it's not him. But you, on the other hand, you are very recognizable.
Wow.
First of all, you're a giant. I mean, compared to me, I'm 5'9".
Usually I'm standing there with my arms waving around complaining about something.
Whenever we go to the LIRR, you know, Paul has to drop me off at the train and he's going on Amtrak. He carries me at times. I'm like a little baby in his arms. It's amazing to witness, actually. Just carrying me. Drops me off on the train, tucks me in, and goes his way.
It is sort of like that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm stumbling.
But that's mostly because you've had a little too much to drink.
Yeah, it never ends well for me. So you and Mary Jo, you did your panel yesterday.
Yep.
A lot of people were messaging me, telling me that it went great, and that's always great to hear because with you guys, it has to be the dynamic has to be so natural because you do a show every week, and it's just so easy. Yeah. And even when you're not doing a show, when we're just out drinking, it's nobody's ever talking over each other. It's like everybody knows what the cues are and when you're going to start and when you're going to stop. It's fascinating to see people engage like that.
Sure.
That flows so well.
I love seeing Mary Jo, and you know, we also you know, these trips are great because it's like a family reunion. It's not just the people I work with who I get to see, which I like because usually I don't, you know, I only see them a couple times a year, but it's also a lot of the speakers. You know, I ran into John Saville this morning at Starbucks, or you know, it's just Tony Redmond yesterday or whatever, and you know, getting tips about our next trip to Ireland because he lives in Dublin, and there's all that kind of fun dynamic to the people you get to see, you know, because you only see them once or twice a year, you know, and so it's neat doing this.
So before we go into what we had on the notes, you got a late breaking announcement. I don't know how much detail you want to go into. Do you want to just touch on that a little bit?
Yeah,
because this just happened just now.
Sure. The other day, Mary Jo reported that the second round of Microsoft layoffs for 2014 were going to occur today on Thursday. And I actually got one person from Microsoft who corroborated that. I don't mean to joke about this kind of thing, but I was sort of joking with Mary Jo yesterday about the fact that it's possible that corroboration actually was just based on Mary Jo's story, that, you know, someone at Microsoft read Mary Jo's story, it spread around Microsoft, and then my guy heard it and then said, hey, I heard we're going to have layoffs on Thursday. So I didn't really know for sure, but I normally like to get more than one source if I can for that kind of thing. But I just got a text message as we were starting up, and layoffs are happening right now. So it is happening.
Do you know where is it? Is it just company wide, or are they focusing on?
It's all over the company. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, the way this works, by the way, is that they reserve rooms, meeting rooms in buildings all around the Microsoft campus for these layoffs, and so that was, I think, how someone had noticed this originally, and that's what happens, and so it's not a good thing. I mean, people will have to waltz into a room, get told this story, and then walk out in a very bad mood, and it affects everyone. I mean, even the people who are left there are, of course, impacted by this as well. So,
I mean, the last layoff that they had, I mean, it was going to happen because it was a Nokia acquisition. They were cutting a lot of the redundancy within Nokia and then coming over to Microsoft. But this one is internal. I mean, this is a internal layoff.
Well, the other one, yeah. I mean,
we're not talking about subcontractors. We're talking about people that work at Microsoft.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably across the board, really. But yeah, it's Microsoft employees. Yes, yeah, full-time employees.
What does that speak about the morale within the company, considering it's such a transition period for them? And it's and they're in my opinion, I think they are going to go back into a boom period as far as perception goes with the operating system and the products that they're releasing. But how is this? What does this mean internally for them?
Right. Microsoft is a very big and complex company, and complex from a sort of a hierarchy perspective. And so, this is one of those things that's lousy on an individual basis, but I think it's also important and healthy for Microsoft to do this because it had gotten too big and too complex. And, my only worry about layoffs, and I've heard this from a couple of people there, is that you would think that you would go into any given group and be able to evaluate the employees there, what they've done, what they've accomplished, and say, well, unfortunately, the way it works out is these two guys here haven't shown up as much as these other three guys, and that's how we're going to do the layoffs. But that's not what I've heard. I mean, I've heard from multiple sources that the people being laid off, it's almost random, and that a lot of good people are being laid off. And that kind of thing, if it's true, can really impact the morale at a tough time because in some ways, not getting laid off, being part of the new plan, being part of the solution and not part of the problem should energize people. But if it is random or seems random, that undermines that, right? Because you never know when the hammer's going to fall because it could just fall on you next time.
Yeah.
So, we'll see. I think overall it is healthy for the company. It needs to be a smaller, quicker moving entity. This is a very small part of how they can get there.
Do you think part of the mistake was that they grew so big over the last, decade or so where they just kept growing and growing and dividing, where now, you have a new CEO, new focus, new plan, and they're going to run as a smaller company. Committees are fine, but when committees get way too big, it kind of defeats the entire purpose of having a committee. Is it that kind of mentality where we just grew way too big and we're just not getting the stuff done that we need to get done? Or is this, money-wise, they're just laying off?
Success masks a lot of inefficiencies. When Windows is running gangbusters and is generating several billions of dollars of profits, or tens of billions of dollars of revenues a quarter, you can have lots of employees, you can have lots of fluff, you can have lots of people doing nothing. You can afford to do that kind of stuff. But they need to remake the company, and that's what they're doing this year. It's hard to do this. It's hard for a giant organization to stop doing everything it's done before to be successful and do other things. And so it's just got it's not an enviable task, but I think the current CEO has the right worldview, at least, and it seems like he's heading in the right direction, strategically.
So currently, I'm not seeing this reported yet by the big three, tech blogs right now.
The Microsoft layoffs.
Yeah, I have not seen it.
I just got
it's literally happening.
Literally
just
got
now.
A text message from a human being who's there and has seeing it happening. So I mean, it's just.
That's sad. I mean, in a way, I understand corporate-wise, but it's always sad when people are losing their jobs, and it's unexpected to an extent. So how is this now? There's a big Microsoft event happening in 2 weeks. So September 30th is the Microsoft event in San Francisco, where they're going to unveil Windows 9. I think it's a fascinating time that it's happening now, 12 days before this big unveiling. Was that
Yep.
strategic to an extent, or was that just random that they just decided to do it before the event, not after?
I think they're related. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think they're related.
So I guess we could go right into that. And
Okay.
I actually I want to focus on an article that you wrote on your website, the Surface 3 kind of versus the Mac Air. And I'm not surprised because I know I know your thought process
You're a
when it comes to
reasonable human being.
Yeah, like I know your thought process with technology, and we've spoken about it, but a lot of people take you as the Windows guy, the Microsoft guy, and you like Microsoft and you don't like Apple. I have seen so much Apple praise on your website. I thought I was reading 9 to 5 Mac. In a good way. In a good way. In the best way possible.
Misunderstood when it comes out. People will remember a crack that I made about the iPad in 2010 before it was released to anybody. But what they don't remember is the 4 years of actual, honest, hands-on reviews and, whatever. That's people. That people are petty, but and Apple, Apple can be petty, but under Tim Cook, I would say, especially with this most recent generation of products and services, there's been this kind of opening. With regards to the MacBook in particular, I've always owned Macs. I mean, going back, 14 years or whatever now, since Steve Jobs returned to the company. When they announced OS 10, I knew I would have to evaluate that as it evolved and compare it to Windows at the time, which I always did. And I did that as honestly as I could at the time, But that's not because Paul likes to focus on Apple. It's because Paul likes to focus on things that compete with what Microsoft does.
Absolutely.
And that evolves over time. And so 1990s, that would have been like Linux and Mac, Mac has become less important from that perspective over the past several years because of the rise of mobile devices. So iOS, iPhone first, iPad, iPod Touch, and then, of course, the Android stuff has become a focus for me because that's what people are using. And, of course, today it's kind of beautiful because Microsoft is releasing apps and their services on all of those platforms in very radical ways in some cases. And so there's a lot to write about there. But because of that, it had been a while since I'd gotten a new Mac. I think my previous, not counting the Mac I bought used for my daughter, which she uses to run Windows 7 on, by the way. The most recent Mac that I've used personally was a Core 2 Duo based Mac Mini, and so we're talking about a machine that's 4 years old.
Yeah, so you're not going to get the best performance out of it.
Yeah, so I buy Windows laptops and machines every year, all the time. All the time. Yeah, and the Mac, though, in the past I might have bought a Mac every year or two. I haven't bought one in 4 years, and so I thought, well, there's some things I haven't looked at recently, including all of the ways in which you can run Windows in a Mac, which I find interesting. And my advice on that kind of stuff, my experience about that kind of stuff is out of date, and so maybe it's time to catch up on that. But there are things that the Mac requires, or that requires a Mac. For me, if I want to know what's going on with iOS software development, for example,
you need
have
a
to have
Mac.
a Mac.
Yeah,
can't do that anywhere else. In iOS 8, which I find to be very interesting, there are features that work better when you use it in tandem with a Mac. This is the kind of better together approach that Microsoft used to do, or maybe I guess still does, between Windows and Windows Server. And that's interesting, and I want to test that kind of stuff. And I want to do it on a machine that makes sense, So, I'm not switching to the Mac or anything, and I'll just ruin the surprise. For people who are going to read or are reading my series of articles about using Windows on a Mac, here's the conclusion. If your goal is to run Windows, running it on a Mac is not the most efficient way. So for typical readers of my site, buying a MacBook Air or whatever is not really the best approach necessarily. But there are people out there who want to use Apple hardware for whatever reason. They're going to use Mac OS 10. Maybe sometimes they need to run a Windows application or some Windows applications. The solutions that are available today, whether they're virtualization or something like Crossover, where you can run individual apps, or the dual boot stuff with Boot Camp are tremendously better than they were.
Absolutely, yeah.
5 years ago, 6 years ago, whatever. So there's a lot to write about there. And of course, Mac Office will come out. I want to write about that kind of stuff. So it's just something I took it on this trip. I have a few things I wanted to test, and I also wanted to write about this stuff. But this is not like my new laptop. My next trip when I go to San Francisco in September or after that. I'm going to bring the Surface Pro 3. I actually personally do prefer that machine.
But I mean, you did a comparison of even down to the price and the processor. So when you compared to, similarly spec'd out machines, it was neck and neck. I mean, it was
close.
even.
Yeah, it was close. They're comparable.
$12.99 and $12.99.
Right. So what's the takeaway to that? Honestly, the takeaway to that shouldn't be, hey, this Windows guy appears to really like a MacBook Air. It's, Microsoft is kind of new to this game, and they now have a machine that competes neck and neck with what and anyone would take to be the benchmark in this market, the category-defining original Ultrabook, which is a fine machine. And so Microsoft, took a couple of generations, right? I mean, Surface Pro 1 and 2 were not necessarily ideal. New Microsoft, they're listening to customer feedback now. They're not just trying to jam something down your throat.
It's interesting how depending on what you're doing, like if I use my computer for media consumption, right, and I'm in that price range of $12.99, $1,300, $1,400 for a not an entry level, a nice top tier laptop, for example. I am going to go with the Surface. Why? The display is much better than the Mac. Because it is not when you compare the Mac Air and the Surface, because it's not Retina, the Mac Air.
Yeah, but for content that's great. There's some irony to that. The Mac would be better with a Retina display from it, because it uses a traditional desktop. The Mac uses a traditional kind of desktop interface, but it's still better with a Retina display because they've designed it to work well with those kinds of displays. Sure. Windows, which on the Surface Pro 3 does have what is in essence a Retina display, you would use primarily on the desktop, at least I would, does not work very well with the Retina class display because Windows has not figured out that display scaling stuff.
How about with the next generation of Windows? Have they said anything about it?
No. So we'll see. That I've not heard. There have been improvements. Windows 8 had some improvements. 8.1 had some improvements. But it's still not as elegant as it is on the Mac. And so it's kind of a weird thing. Here's the MacBook Air, low-res display, would work great with high-res. Here's the Surface Pro 3, really high-res display, but frankly, desktop would be better on a low-res display. Yeah. So it's okay. I wish I could swap the display resolutions. I'd rather have the Surface Pro 3 at 16, but I guess it's 1440 by 900, and have the MacBook Air be some kind of crazy Retina resolution. But
so the other thing that I took away from it is the fact that and this is
Apple bashing goon.
You're not an Apple bashing goon.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
I am probably more critical of Apple at times than you are, which is funny because I've been accused of being a Mac fanboy. But when you see an iPad and a Mac here, that's the first thing that you think. And then you look at my face and you're like, oh, he's definitely like an Apple. He's a Mac user.
It's like a Pinot slurping.
Yeah.
Apple lover.
Pinky up, The other thing that I always recommend to people, and this has been an issue for me. I type a lot. I'm typing up a lot of emails. I'm writing show notes. I'm always writing for the website. I'm writing on the forum. Your keyboard has to be good, above tolerable, in order to have a positive experience. I have not found a PC, in my opinion, that has a keyboard that works as good as the Mac does for me.
So
and the trackpad. I mean, the trackpad. I'll go.
All right. So by the way, the Mac trackpad is amazing, and here's how it's amazing, in every single way, shape, and form. So I have never found a PC trackpad that's worth a damn ever, not once, and I've probably used every single one that's ever been made. Like, they're terrible.
But why? And, I mean, why? Do you have a reason?
I don't know. I really can't explain why.
In
fact, PC trackpads are so bad that I prefer the smaller the trackpad, the better, because I don't want to hit it inadvertently with my wrist and trigger the mouse cursor going flying. And so as Apple has made their big, giant glass trackpads, I thought, this is not the kind of thing that I want. But honestly, when you're in Mac OS 10 anyway, scrolling on this thing is so buttery smooth. It's the first time I've ever seen a trackpad where I thought, this isn't just acceptable. Like, this is superior. It's really nice. On Windows, I always bring a mouse. I always enable the software where I can turn off the trackpad when a mouse is plugged in, so I don't inadvertently hit the trackpad, trigger the mouse thing. So the trackpad on the MacBook is just superior. There's no mincing of words there. The keyboard is fine. It's good. It's better than the Surface Pro keyboard just because it's a little bit bigger. It's full size.
Which keyboard on the Mac?
on the MacBook
Yeah.
Air. My only complaint about it, and this is a very niche-y kind of thing, and I'm coming at it from the perspective of a Windows user, is that when you use it in Windows, which I do, or I should say, which I am right now. So right now I'm actually using Boot Camp. So I'm in Windows 8. I'm using it's
On
full
the
blown
on the
Windows.
Air.
Yeah, there's no Mac occurring on this thing. When you use it like that, the keyboard is not ideal because the Control, Alt, and Windows buttons are not in the right places.
Yeah.
And it seems like and also there's no backspace key, so you have to hold down the function key and delete to do backspace. And then you have to know the secret code for taking screenshots, which is like function shift F11 or whatever. Anyway, that doesn't matter. But honestly, if you think about the problems you can have while you're typing, if you're too cramped, that's a problem. If the position is bad, that's a problem. But the weirdness of keyboard controls, you want to do something like Control C, Control V, for cut and paste, Control Alt something. Any of those things, they're hard. They're too close. They're too. It actually triggers. You can feel it. Like it's just not. It's not.
Is it
good.
different on the 50? I've never owned a 15-inch Mac. Is it different on the 15-inch?
I think they're identical. I believe they dropped the same keyboard into the thing. So you can map the keys differently. There are software utilities that do that. I mean, I'm not going to fool around with it. The truth is, after this week, I'm not going to be using it full time. I don't really care, but it's just something to know about, because I hear a lot. I heard this yesterday, literally in the speaker room. Oh, Mac hardware is the best for running Windows, and it's like, no, it really isn't. But if you have this need, you need a Mac for whatever reason, but you also need to run, some Microsoft apps. It works. It works great. I've been surprised by how much better virtualization is now than it used to be. And I'm going to get into that weirdness a little bit more later in the game because there's so much going on there. But
so how are you running Windows? Are you doing
so I've got
Boot Camp or?
Yeah, so I'm doing it 2 different ways right now, and I'll be doing it a third way soon. So I have Boot Camp enabled. I split the disk in half.
Okay.
Windows and Mac. You can boot between the two. And on the Mac side, I've also installed Parallels, and Parallels is one of the 2 major virtualization solutions in the Mac platform. The battery life and the performance of Parallels is amazing. The ability to run, again, this is not from, I wouldn't do this from me, but you're a Mac guy, you're running the Mac, you've got Mac apps and that's your deal. You got an iPhone, whatever, you're getting on with life. But for whatever reason, you need Visual Studio for the PC, or, I'm trying to think of something you might need. You want to run the latest version of Word or something, because the one on the Mac is a joke. So you can install it in this virtual environment, and you can run the app, and it runs in a window or full screen side by side with your Mac apps. You can multitask between them. You can use Mac keyboard controls, keyboard shortcuts. So instead of using Control C, which is a little hard on this keyboard and a little non-standard to you as a Mac user because you're using Command C all the time everywhere else, you can use Command C.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can actually use Mac control keyboard commands in Parallels.
Here's my question for you. How is the performance in Parallels versus Boot Camp? Because Boot Camp is not a VM. It's dual booting, whichever one you want to do. So have you noticed there to be performance gains with Boot Camp compared to Parallel? I mean, I would imagine it would be better.
So you would imagine that Boot Camp would be better.
Yeah.
It always was. The problem with Boot Camp has always been that Apple provides substandard drivers. And so it applies Windows to the disk in such a way that you can't fix it later, unfortunately, where it acts like it has it's working on like a BIOS-based system. So the power management is off. The battery life is terrible. The performance is fine. I mean, running apps is fine. But, instead of getting 10 to 12 hours of battery life like you would on the Mac side, you get 4 hours or maybe 4.5 hours of battery life on the Boot Camp side. And so you can fix this somewhat with some oh, and the trackpad's terrible too, by the way. This beautiful glass trackpad that works so wonderfully in the Mac OS X is herky-jerky and not accurate, and it's terrible to use on the Windows side using Apple's drivers. But what you can do is find third-party utilities that fix these problems, and so I have a few of them running now. So one is a trackpad plus program that makes the trackpad work very good. It's not quite as good as the Mac, but much, much better than before. And then there's this thing called I gotta try to bring it up here so I can see the name of it. Power Plant Assistant, which dramatically improves the power management stuff. Now it's still BIOS based, so you still get the old-fashioned stuff. It's like sleep and hibernation, but the battery life goes up. I haven't measured it exactly, but it's definitely gone up by at least 50%. and this thing becomes more usable as a Windows machine. And so those things are free. You know, you have to know they're out there. I don't know how you'd ever, you know, find.
So you don't recommend somebody buy a Mac and just run Windows on it? I mean, they're not going to get the best experience.
Exactly right. I wouldn't do that, and I wouldn't recommend that to others. And that's something, you know. Again, I'm ruining the conclusion here, but when I get to, you know, when I get to the end of it, I mean, that's going to be my basic conclusion, which is, you know, there are these myths with the Mac that I hear, you know, and one of them is that the Mac is the best way to run Windows, and it really isn't. But don't take that the wrong way. That doesn't mean it's terrible. It just means for this kind of money, you could buy a really nice Mac. I'm sorry, a Windows Ultrabook, where the keyboard, you know, the keyboard shortcuts would be normal. The battery life would be great. You'd get the modern power management functionality. You'd get additional ports and things too. I mean, this is kind of non-standard, you know, like Thunderbolt for video out and stuff like that. But you know, it's fine. By the way, it's fine, and it's much better than it used to be. I mean, so I look at this capability more like Apple would, which is we don't expect people to run Windows primarily, but we understand that people need to run Windows or Windows apps for whatever reasons, and we have these ways you can do it. And honestly, they're much better than they used to be. Much better.
You to kind of stick with the keyboard and the topic on Win SuperSite, I saw an article which I was fascinated by. Is the new tablet keyboard from Microsoft that they announced. Now, what is? I'm going to scroll down. I don't know if you can see the video. What is this?
The cover.
This is a cover.
It's a cover. So the way that works is it you cover on, the keyboard powers down. There's no on-off switch. So that's how you power it down. So in other words, you can throw it in your bag, you can travel.
Yeah.
When you pop the cover off, it powers on, obviously. Then you can lay that cover down upside down, and there's a slot in it so that your tablet can sit up at the right angle where you can actually use it with the keyboard. Because if you don't have a Surface device, your tablet doesn't have a kickstand. There's no way for it to stand up unless you use a case of some kind or some special stand. So, and you know from using iPad devices that even though they include a stand, well, actually, you'd probably use it in landscape. That'd be okay. So you could use your iPad stand, obviously, in landscape mode. That'd be fine. I actually, you know, for whatever it's worth, like I've used Word on an iPad. I like that in portrait mode, you know. And of course, the Apple stand is not very ideal for that. But you could pop your iPad into that thing in portrait mode and use it that way if you wanted to.
Huh. I actually like this, the cover. For the
I'm going to review it. It's not out yet, and it's not available yet for review. I guess that's happening soon. But I don't, you know, again, I don't think that's going to be a full-size, awesome keyboard like the one on the Mac or even the one on the Surface Pro. But I also don't think that people that use iPads or Android tablets are working primarily on those devices. It's just something, it's there when you need it. And
yeah, but when it comes to the Surface, it's a little different, right? It's like I would imagine that the people that are buying a Surface 3 or Surface 4 or whatever the next generation is, they are not just using it as a tablet, and they kind of want a really good, maybe not full-size keyboard, but a really good keyboard to go along with it.
They're buying a PC.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm curious on what their approach is going to be with that, because right now, I mean, you get that crappy smart cover, and it's not that great, right? I mean,
so I was reminded of this in writing about the MacBook compared to the Surface Pro 3. I really wish that Microsoft or some third party, I can't believe this hasn't happened yet, would release an actual hardware keyboard base, you know, where it would use that same dock connector, and it would provide an actual, you know, like every single other 2-in-1 PC on Earth, you know, an actual keyboard. It could even have potentially have a battery in it for additional battery life. Not that that's actually a huge problem with Surface Pro 3, but you know, I get the approach. Like, I like the approach. The keyboard they provide today is much better than it used to be. It's got backlighting. It's got a decent, for a PC, kind of trackpad. But, you know, one of the things I really like about the MacBook Air and PC Ultrabooks is getting that large wrist rest, which is better ergonomically, you know, full-size keyboard. So you could use any Bluetooth keyboard you wanted, but I don't want to carry a bunch of stuff, you know.
Yeah, that's the thing.
It'd be nice if you could just clap those things together and bring them as one unit on the road.
Yeah. Paul, I want to talk about the Windows event that's going to happen in about 12 days. You're going to go to San Francisco for that. I want to talk about the iPhone 6. We have a lot to get to, plus iOS 8, which I upgraded all my devices to late last night. But before we do that, why don't we take a moment and talk about our Patreon campaign? If you want to support the show, you like what we're doing, you want to say, hey, Paul, hey, Andrew, here's a penny. Go buy yourself some gum. You could do that.
Hopefully it's a little better than that.
Hopefully it's a little better than that. I mean, we would suggest $1, but you could do 50 cents. You could do, since I said that a couple of weeks ago, that you could tip whatever, people thought that you have to tip $1. We deeply appreciate the people that tip $1, but we also deeply appreciate the people that are tipping a quarter and 50 cents and 20 and 15 cents. I mean, whatever you guys are giving us, it really helps and it really builds up. Right now, we're at $509.88 a week. I'm hoping that we break through the 500s throughout October. It's one of our goals here. And we are going to be offering you bonus shows. Last week, we did a call-in show where you guys called in, you guys spoke to Paul, you guys spoke to me. I think we're going to do that once a week, and I opened that up where anybody could view on our Patreon page. So the call-in show is a bonus to everybody that's helping. You could, it's on our website. It's on the Patreon website, patreon.com/whatthetech. You could go watch it there. And it's amazing to see how many people are coming out. 353 people supporting the show. And you can do so by going to patreon.com/whatthetech. A little plug for our little tip jar that we're doing. And we're going to be recording a bonus show after this. So stay tuned after the show if you're watching live. Paul.
Yes.
Let's talk about the Microsoft event. Windows 9. Windows 9 event, September 30th. They're doing it in San Francisco. You're going, I'm assuming, which I think you did say you're going. You got the invite.
Yep.
What are you expecting from this announcement?
A couple things. So I will say, we were joking about this yesterday. Mary Jo ran into me at some point yesterday and said, hey, got this invite, right? And I said, yeah. And she said, are you going to go to this? And I said, yeah. And she says, so are we seriously going to fly all the way across the country to sit in a meeting for 1 hour and then that's going to be the whole thing? Which it is. It's just 1 hour. And I said, yeah, we are. She's like, all right. And, this is so far, this being Windows 9, is mapping very closely, actually, I would say identically to everything that we've sort of known through rumors and our own sources and everything. And so I think it was Mary Jo who first reported that the September 30 unveil, so to speak, would be enterprise focused. And it is. And that's one thing they've said explicitly. This is for the enterprise. There will be a consumer version of the preview, January, February. And so the reason for that is, and I was told explicitly, don't expect to see every single feature unveiled at this event. And the reason being that they want to focus on that major part of the audience that was kind of alienated by Windows 8, which is everybody. No, which is the businesses. And so what they're going to show is the stuff we've seen in the leaks, which is this thing that looks like something a Windows 7 user would be comfortable using, right? So we're going to see that. And I one of the weird things about this event is that people have been reporting, well, this is like when the technical preview starts, we're going to get the build. And that's not what I'm hearing at all. And in fact, I feel comfortable saying that is completely untrue. And what I mean by that is I have always heard that the technical preview ships in October, early October. And in fact, when the first September 30 report started coming out, I was like, that's not what I'm hearing. I'm not hearing September. I'm hearing October. And my understanding of this is that, I'll just say it frankly, we're not. The build is not occurring that day. Okay. It's occurring in early October.
In a couple of weeks from then.
Yeah, and it will be maybe a week later. It will be public. It will be available to anyone who wants it. But again, it's not. It doesn't necessarily reflect everything that will be in the next version of Windows. It's aimed primarily at
enterprise.
The enterprise stuff. And what that means is, you can see some of this in the leaks. There's going to be updated versions of other things in there. So you see kind of a mix of old and new. You'll see icons that look like old things, and you'll see icons that look like new things. And there's no way to, draw this firm line between old, consumer business. And so some stuff's going to be a little weird at first. But the stuff we're seeing, the virtual desktops, start menu, a lot of the desktop capabilities are all based around what businesses want to see.
So now I have a bunch of questions for you.
Okay.
One, so there's going to be two different technical preview builds. One is going to be the consumer version later on, let's say in January, and then the other one is this one is going to be the enterprise preview.
Yeah, I sort of yes. I mean, I hate to say it that way, because really what we're getting is this thing that's going to keep updating, and so it's not so much like there's a big release later on that's just for consumers.
So by January, it's going to be updated to be consumer friendly
and be matched with a consumer-focused push to get people to look at it early.
Okay.
What they want to do right now is get it out to businesses and say, and so you might have to go through some process where you fill out a little form and explain who you are and why you want to look at this or whatever. But it's open to everybody. But what they want is feedback that's relevant to businesses. Does this work with your intranet sites? Does it work with the software you're using? Does it work with the devices you're working? Does the functionality we have in there make sense for people coming from Windows 7? There's going to be a whole consumer story later on, and so that stuff will eventually make its way into the. I hate to call it builds now because it's a little different than it used to be. Although of course there is a build number, but it will make its way into the product, and there'll be a consumer push in the spring. Which it kind of maps to the way they've done this in the past. They used to do kind of developer, business, consumer. They're starting with business this time because they know that this is the audience they've sort of alienated with Windows 8.
So have we figured out exactly what the different version of Windows is going to be with the release of Windows 9? How many different versions are we going to see, and what are they going to be called?
Not exactly, but see, this is what falls into that consumer part, because there's going to be some skew over on the side that's what used to be Windows RT, what used to be Windows Phone combined into one thing.
Okay.
And so that's something they're not revealing until the consumer part of it.
So what about enterprise? Like, is there going to be Windows 9 Enterprise Edition, Windows 9 Home
I don't know
Preview,
exactly,
Windows 9 Ultimate, whatever
Right.
they're going to call it? Are they going to
I
number that way?
imagine I think what we're going to have is Windows Pro, Windows Enterprise, but I don't know exactly. And that Windows one is RT.
With someone like me that is not really enterprise, I don't need a lot of the specialty stuff in enterprise, but I don't really care for a lot of the glitz and the glam of Windows and the OS. Where do what do I do? Do I just am I fine with regular?
Right now, your choices are simple because there's going to be a technical preview, and you either get it or you don't.
Either get it or you don't.
So you don't have to worry about that yet. If you are someone who was alienated by Windows 8 and are not convinced that the 8.1 stuff fixed any problems, really, this is the next logical step. It's really 8.2, but the thing we're not seeing is there's a tablet side of this release too. We haven't seen it yet because the leak we've seen so far is just people running it in a VM, and that doesn't show you very much.
We don't know much about RT.
Right. Like if I had this leak, I'd be running it on tablets. I'd be running it on different PCs. I'd be putting it on everything just to see how it reacts. It's going to be different on a tablet because the touch stuff is going to be there. You're going to be going to the start menu. I'm sorry, but to the start screen instead of the start menu.
It's amazing how the focus has changed, right? Especially with the leaks. When Windows 8 was leaking, everybody was talking about the touch functions and the tablet functions, but now it's all about the desktop. You're absolutely right. We're not hearing anything about how this is going to function on touch.
We will, but I think the approach on the tablet side is going to be combined Windows Phone and Windows RT.
And we have no idea what that's going to look like. Yeah. I'm curious about that. Is that going to be part of this announcement or no? Nothing about that.
So. No.
Okay, so it's interesting because that's not really the impression that you got from this with a lot of the release information that came out for this event. People saying, oh, well, Windows 9, they're going to tell us everything about Windows 9, but you're saying, well, not everything.
Yep.
This is specifically kind of catering to enterprise.
Right.
Which rightfully so.
I was explicitly told that you're not going to see everything. You're not going to see all the consumer stuff.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm curious about it. I'm actually in California that day, too.
Oh, you really?
Yeah. So I'm assuming we're not doing a show on the 30th?
Right.
Okay.
So Mary Jo and I both are kind of on the same trip. And so we're coming in Monday. We're there Tuesday. We're going to go up to Petaluma on Tuesday afternoon.
Okay.
And do Windows Weekly in the off day because Wednesday, when we would normally do it, we're both flying home.
Okay.
So we'll probably have to do that Thursday, I would imagine, if that's.
Okay. I'm in Los Angeles on Wednesday, actually, not Tuesday.
Wednesday. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's the day I'm flying.
I should. You know what? I should stop by Petaluma. I just go right there. Hey,
actually, Leo won't be there. I think we're doing the show with Padres. So.
Cool. That's interesting. I'm curious on Do you think they're going to make like another announcement? Are they going to hold some sort of announcement for consumer, or is this the announcement? Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll one.
No, this is just the first. They describe it as chapters or steps or whatever. I mean, they said that build 2014 when we talked about how we were bringing back the start menu and how we were going to offer modern mobile modern mobile apps in Windows, in floating windows on the desktop. That was the first step, the first chapter. This is chapter 2, chapter 3, 4. I'm not sure the exact order, but there are developers we have to worry about, and of course consumers. And so I think that's the phased approach. And then April, unless something has changed, should be the release. And maybe we'll see new Surface devices at that time. I mean, we'll see, but there's a lot to come.
Well, it's definitely different, right? For Windows to be released in April, that really shakes everything up.
Well, it's the right time to do it though, because they not always, but they often release these things after the holiday season is in full swing, after back to school has ended, the exact wrong time to launch something. And so you get something out in the spring, by the time back to school starts in the summer, and by the time the holiday season starts around now, PC makers, device makers can come on board with great stuff, whereas you just get lost in the mix. When you release late October, it's just the most awful time to do that kind of stuff.
Talking about releases, the iPhone 6 pre-orders went on sale last week. It's shipping. What is it? It's tomorrow, right? The date?
Tomorrow. Yep.
Okay. So tomorrow people are going to start getting it. iOS 8 was released yesterday. I upgraded. I wasn't running the beta. Paul, I know, Paul, you were running the beta, but I wasn't. It's fine. It's what iOS 7 was, but fixed.
But fixed.
Yeah, I mean,
it's so similar to iOS 7 from a visual standpoint that it's hard to not be cynical about how they've lapsed right back into their evolutionary update thing. But you know what? The truth is iOS 7, 8, whatever is fine, and you have to look under the covers. I mean, this reminds me of Windows 98. I know that's going back a ways, but if you think about Windows 98 as something that takes Windows 95, which is a very radical overhaul, and then fine-tunes everything. And there's no one major feature in Windows 98 where you can say, wow, this is why you have to get it. It's like 100 little things everywhere.
Yeah.
And so back in, whenever that was 15, 16 years ago, I would have said, this is the best version of Windows that they've ever released. Because, even though it looks just like Windows 95, there's these little things everywhere that really make it great. And that's what iOS 8 is. It's the same kind of release. And there's no reason to be cynical about it. I mean, they're just maturing something. And I think they're doing it so in a nice fashion. I like it.
So I installed it here. The best feature of this thing is the family sharing, in my opinion. Personally for me. Jess and I,
it's huge for me.
Yeah.
My kids share all our stuff. So
Jess and I have been using. And mine got really convoluted on what we're using and what we're sharing, and it got really confusing because she bought a MacBook. She did not like the Mac. She went back to Windows. She went back to her ThinkPad. I took the Mac and I started using it, but everything was registered under, Jessica's email address and Jessica's name. So I switched everything over to my name.
Right.
So now she got an iPhone. It's under my name. She got a Mac. It's under my name because we're sharing the same iTunes account because we're just buying everything on one. Why have two separate ones?
Well, by the way, this is your wife. So at least
this is my wife.
Your wife.
I do trust my
this
wife.
With my kids.
Sometimes.
Do you like to trust kids with stuff like this?
It's not good.
Yeah, that's why this is important.
Yeah. So it's been a mess with our account to begin with because she's downloading songs that I don't care for. So now we split it. I got my own. The great thing is you could share the apps, which is phenomenal because I don't have to go and buy the apps again. The music is shared. Whatever you bought on iTunes, that's there. This is where my little problem lies. I have iTunes Match. All my stuff is on iTunes Match with her account. I don't have access to iTunes Match. You cannot share iTunes Match.
Over family share.
What I would have preferred was, hey, give us another $10.
Are you sure?
I am 92%.
I'm
almost 100%. I'm almost 100%.
The only thing I would look at is, it seems obviously on an iPhone like any other device, whether it's Android or Windows Phone, you log in with your account. That's kind of how you do it. But it seems like I'd have to go. I'm going to look at this now, but I think in some cases you can log in. Can you log in with a discrete account? Username, password for different stuff. I need to look at
You
this.
can. So like iTunes, you could use the same one, but like iCloud, you can't. Like iCloud, you can, and then iTunes, you can. Like everything, you could separate. But the problem with it is that when you initially like sign up your phone, you got to like delink everything and put it back together. It gets all wacky, and sometimes it still thinks it's me on certain things. So it's better to split everything. But the iTunes Match thing is a little wonky in the sense that now I have no problem paying the $24 for the year. That's not a problem at all for me. The problem is I now have to go to Jessica's computer, download all the stuff that I had, right? Because it's out in the cloud. I got to download it all.
So you're literally creating, so you each have your own Apple ID or whatever it's called. And then you have, so the iTunes Match music is associated with that ID even when you have family sharing on.
Yes.
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
you're literally going to have 2 copies of this stuff up in the cloud somewhere.
So Brian Monroe in our chat says, Andrew, just get iTunes Match on your account or swap accounts. Well, I can't swap accounts because it's associated to the iTunes account with her email address that's associated to iCloud and associated to her iMessage. Like it's all linked like that, and I don't want to. I want to totally separate everything, which you should, right?
I sort of feel like you could make this work.
I can, but think about, like let's say your kid, Paul. Mark has been downloading all these, he has iTunes Match. He has all this MP3s. It's linked now to iTunes Match because your account is iTunes Match.
Yep.
And that's how he's been accessing it. So now he has his own account, right? He doesn't have to use Paul Thurrott's iTunes account. He has Mark's account. And all that stuff is gone because he didn't buy it on iTunes. He had it from, whatever else. So now I have to go download everything, put it on a portable drive, put it on my Mac,
you know what though?
Load everything up.
It's actually worse than that because you also have to, if this matters, then match these things later on too. Like if you buy music and you want it to be in the other account, you have to, right?
Well, if I buy music, if Jess buys music, that automatically syncs to my account because we're sharing the music. It'll say under purchases.
So from here on out, okay.
Yeah. Like if you've bought, if all you've done, all the music that you've ever bought is through iTunes, you're fine. You're not going to have this problem. But 99% of the people that are downloading MP3s and are music fans, a lot of the stuff you did not get from iTunes. That's the reality.
Right.
So that's where the problem is. What I would have liked to do, why can't it say, you know what, it's still $24 to you, but we can link these two together. If you have iTunes Match and you have iTunes Match, you know what, you have access to that.
What if it was $48 or whatever?
Whatever. I don't think it was really thought out. And I could see them doing this later, adding a second, package for iTunes Match where it's like family share iTunes Match.
Family, yeah.
Which makes a little bit more sense.
$30 or whatever, $35.
But I don't think it was thought out in the sense that people have other stuff and you may have synced this and you may have synced that. Have one person as a master account where everything's synced and then everybody else has access to it. That's how I would have done it. It frustrated me. That was, I lost my mind yesterday over that. And people don't know why. And I'm screaming at Jess. I'm like, but you don't understand. iTunes Match. She's like, I don't even, what is iTunes? What are you talking about? I had like 10 songs on my phone. So I had a mental breakdown from it.
So I'm not going to set this up till I get home. I will look at this. And I'm curious about this. I actually, since I'm away, right? So these things are a little harder. But on my iPhone, I thought, well, I can test this family sharing thing by just sharing something with myself. But what I found was, I tried to add email addresses to it. Every email address I tried was something that's already associated with my primary Apple ID. So I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to wait till I get home. I'll get my kids' email addresses. I'll actually set this up because I think they both have an iPad. That's probably it. I guess they both have an iPad. So, they want to. They want to access, they all want the same apps and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, everything else is done really well. Like the photo stream with the family, I think that's pretty cool that you could kind of just keep sharing photos with the family. Like it just, under the photo stream, it just says like family plan, and then you can just dump everything in there if you want to share it. It's actually, that's done really well. I think that's huge, and it's going to really help out, especially with the apps because, Jess is buying apps, I'm buying apps. Why spend double for the apps that you're getting already? Other than that, I mean, the OS, it's fine. It's everything that was in iOS 7, just there again.
Just more of it.
Just more of it.
Yep.
I hate the fact that they added this little tips thing. Did you see that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's really
very Windows-like, you know.
Yeah.
That I don't even know why they did. I thought that was kind of strange, but
so another thing that I realized, Paul, and I don't know how much time you spend with this, but since you don't use an iPhone as your everyday phone, I don't use an iPhone or iPad every day, especially for contacts.
For a while, at least, right? I mean,
yeah. So I started playing around with the contacts list, like how to organize contacts in iOS.
Yep.
I have to tell you, it's a little complicated because they don't give you so much function. Like if you have Facebook contacts that Facebook is now syncing into iOS, it doesn't match properly, and you don't know, like the default image, for example. My default image on Justice's phone will not sync to my picture on Facebook. You have to manually sync it. You have to say, like, this is the image I want to use. But for other people, it works perfectly fine.
Right.
I just think on Android, it's a little bit easier, and you get a little bit more control over that.
There's actually, looking at the contact stuff now, I mean, there are software problems that have been fixed elsewhere a long time ago. I see multiple people, like the same people, Steven.
Yeah.
Even the AT&T stuff, like the AT&T directory assistance, customer service, pay my bill numbers are all duplicated 4 times each because they must be in each one of my accounts or something. Windows Phone solved that problem in 2010. I mean, this is, bizarre. And the way Windows Phone would handle this is you look at people with the same or similar names, you combine them into a single contact, you link the contacts, and then use the picture from Facebook if they have it, because that's the picture people chose, and that's the one they would want, and then you can change it to something else if you want. That's just common sense stuff. I'm really surprised that's not better.
So I had to download a third-party app and kind of tell it to do this. I did it that way. It was a little. So I wanted to use this as if I would use my Android device, and I have to say if you're big on your contacts list being organized, I think Android is the way to go, and Google does a much better job at keeping it updated on Android and even on Google. And the other problem with Google is that it's using like a tiny little image for people, so that's a little half-assed also, which is bizarre to me. So I played around with that, but other than that, everything else is pretty much the same. The messaging is similar. The keyboard is similar. It's a little bit smarter in guessing what you're typing for the traditional keyboard. I haven't installed a third-party keyboard yet. I tried to install Swipe Key, and it was weird yesterday to do that. It just didn't work right for me. And I actually stuck with the original keyboard that comes with iOS. Have you played around? Like, what features stood out to you for iOS 8?
Right. So all the stuff I want to use, I haven't used yet because I don't think it really makes a lot of sense on the iPhone 5S or whatever. The health thing I'm very interested in, the new photo stuff, but I'm not using this thing for my photos yet. So when the new iPhone comes, I'll get into that.
Which photo stuff? Which photo stuff?
The new photos, photo album, right? The photo app. The Photos app that replaces iPhoto. Actually, that's not really new, is it? I guess it's just upgraded.
It just upgraded.
I think they had both before, but they're getting rid of iPhoto, right? The Passbook app was never interesting to me, but it will be next month when they add credit cards to it. So I actually popped a Starbucks card into there just so I could get an early look at how that works. And then I went to Starbucks this morning and forgot to bring my iPhone, so I'm a jerk. And that's most of it. I mean, honestly, family sharing is the biggest thing. And then, of course, the new iPhones and the big sizes. I'm curious to see how that stuff works and how it works in landscape mode now, for example, which is something that is not enabled in an iPhone 5S. And so there's a bunch of stuff like I can't really get to yet, either because I'm not using this for my phone or because they're just not enabled on this device. And so I'm still kind of looking forward to it. So I think when the iPhone 6 arrives tomorrow, I won't get it till Saturday.
You'll get a true experience of what it's like.
I'll switch to it, for at least for a couple of weeks. I'll just use this as my phone, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah,
should be interesting.
I have a question for you. The pre-orders for the iPhone 6, record-breaking. Over 4 million iPhone 6s pre-ordered, the most that they've ever done.
Yep, in 24 hours.
In 24 hours. I mean, that's unbelievable, actually. I'm curious, do you know what the number would be for the pre-order beyond the 24 hours? Have they said what it was total?
No, but I think what will happen is the weekend after the actual launch, so like next Monday. I'm sorry, the week after next Monday, they'll probably say we sold X number of over the opening weekend, because I think that's how they've done it in the past, and that's how you can compare it to iPhone 5, 5S, whatever, going back. If you look at those numbers, it has sort of been doubling every year. And I wouldn't be surprised if that happened again. I think this is the right timing from an upgrade schedule for a lot of people. There's a built-in audience of people who have been waiting for a bigger iPhone, and now they have two choices. And there might have been people who switched to Android. I don't know that this will be a huge part of it, but people who went to Android just to get the bigger phone.
Now they're going to come back.
Now we have it on the Apple side, and they're going to come running back.
Oh, I think that's going to play a huge part in their numbers. A humongous part.
Yeah.
I know plenty of Android users that are going to switch.
Yeah, I mean, they'll talk about that if it happens. If there's any big percentage of Android users that switch to iOS, they'll make a point of.
Did they break down the numbers on who's ordering what? Are they ordering the 6 Plus or the 6?
No, and they never did. They didn't do that last year on 5S, 5C either. So
I'm really curious about who's ordering what screen size.
Yeah,
because that's going to play a major part into knowing what people want. I want two demos. One, who's buying what? And two, how many people are coming over from Android, and how many people are buying the larger iPhone that are coming over from Android?
Yeah, I don't see them ever breaking that stuff down, but yeah, I agree. That would be useful information.
Because I went to a 5-inch phone, Paul, and I can't go smaller than a 5-inch phone.
No,
it's dwarfing this 5.1 inch.
Yep.
I mean,
well, the other thing is people are like, if you read the reviews, people are saying like the 5.5-inch version of this thing is humongous. It's too big. It's blah blah blah. And I've been using this like 6-inch 1520 since the beginning of July, and it is big. I've always said that, and it's too big in many ways for many people. I get that, but there are bigger phones. The iPhone the iPhone 6 that's 5.5 inches is the same size as a Galaxy Note that came out 2 years ago. This is not something new. We've had big phones.
Yeah, but if you think about it, if the person reviewing it has always had an iPhone and now they're reviewing the 5.5-inch iPhone, it's going to be gigantic for them. I expect
people like that to be slightly more sophisticated. I don't want someone who has only used iPhones to review an iPhone 6. What, Paul, I want someone who actually has experience with other phones.
You're assuming.
That's what I want.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, that's not the case.
I've used all kinds of phones, so we'll see. I think there's going to be good and bad aspects to it. I also think that if you are an iPhone user, you're probably going to want the smaller of the two. And then there's also the question of next year. What happens next year?
What happens next year?
Because there are going to be some people who are just say, God, I'd love to buy every single device Apple makes, but these things are too big. I've been using this smaller screen device now for several years.
And that's what I want.
4 inches. It's what I want, And so do they make a new low-end phone? Do they have I don't know how they, did they come out with like an iPhone 6C or something? Or like, I don't know.
I think they're going to get away from the smaller display. I think they're going to have to. 4.7 inches, not a big display at all. I mean, it's my Galaxy Note.
It would be too small for me.
My Galaxy Nexus from 3 years ago was that size.
I bet the 1020 is that size. I'd have to go look that up, but it's the 1020 seems small to me.
The 1020? I thought the 1020 is 5 inches.
No? It's smaller than 5.
Huh.
No, it's just, it's not that big.
Yeah, 5.5. I mean, it's a great size.
Is 5 inches.
I mean, if you're wearing skinny jeans like me, you may have some issues.
Yeah, you're going to have to bring like a man purse or something.
Yeah, you need a big man Coach purse to bring with you.
Yep. How big is this thing? I'm going to find this.
Yeah,
I bet it's 4.7 or 4.5 even. It's not.
So tomorrow it goes on sale in the store, and I have to tell you, the pre-orders were a little crazy. Apple's site went down for the pre-order. People, like my brother, for example, he ordered the 6 Plus, and it's telling him November. He's going to get it the first week in November. Now, I don't know if that number's going to be bumped up now because they're producing more, and I think they said 500,000 phones are being produced a day.
When did he pre-order it?
A couple days after.
Yeah, see that. You had to do it right away.
Yeah. So, but I went to Verizon's website the same day, and they said that, you know, the day of, you could go to, if you bought it from Verizon's website, you would have been able to get it the day of. If you went to AT&T, you would have been able to get it the day of. I think a lot of people went to Apple, and that's what, you know.
Well, you know, remember the way they did it? It was like midnight, right? So 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you got up at 3 a.m., you would have noticed that the Apple website was down. And if you actually waited on it, you would have discovered that it was down for 45 minutes, which I got to tell you, at 3 o'clock in the morning,
not something you want to do.
Would have been a very unhappy event. So the way I did it was I saw that the Apple website was down, and I said, well, I'm going to buy it on AT&T anyway. So I went to AT&T, blew right through it, ordered it, no problem.
Did it go on sale on AT&T's website at 3 in the morning as well?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So next morning I got up and I had an email from AT&T. Thanks for your order. We should get this out to you by the middle of October. I think it was like the 14th and the 15th.
Oh, boy.
Thought, you know, that's not great, but these things are really popular. Okay, you know, whatever. And then yesterday I got an email from AT&T. It said, you know, your phone's shipping. You'll have it on Friday. I was like, great. So unfortunately, I'll be flying on Friday, so I won't see it until Saturday. But
well, you're going to have it.
Yeah.
All right, Paul, let's wrap it up. That hour flew by. If you're watching live, stay tuned. We're going to record What to Talk right after the show. WinSuperSite.com, all things Paul Thurrott. Paul, when are you headed back? When are you getting back to...
Friday night. I'm doing a red eye.
Ooh.
Because I love red eyes.
I'm doing a red eye back, actually, from Los Angeles back to New York. When I get back, I'm doing it's like an 11 o'clock, and I land like at 5 in the morning. It's like this crazy flight. I don't like red eyes, actually. I thought I would, but I don't.
No.
Go to our website,
I don't
GFQ.
like them at all, but...
Go to our website, gfqnetwork.com. You can catch it archived there wherever our podcasts are available. We have an SD version for people on the go, watching mobile. We have an HD version. And, of course, we have the audio version. Subscribe, download it. We're also on YouTube, guys. If you're experiencing problems with our servers, it gets literally destroyed when the show gets released. You could go to YouTube, watch it there, or Dailymotion. We're on Dailymotion as well. Just go to our page on there and just put in Guys from Queens Network or GFQ Network. You can find it there. Follow me on Twitter, at Andrew Zarian, at The Rot on Twitter. And that's it, guys. We'll see you all next week on What the Tech.